Hello everybody, my name's Joel and I'm doing this video for Norman Creek Press. We're going to be looking at a Book of the Month Club, which is basically every month we'll talk about a book that is particularly interesting to us. If you've got any ideas about books or you have read this book that we talk about and you would like to leave a comment below, please do. If you enjoy this sort of comment, please subscribe to our station. That helps us to keep YouTube happy, and also sign up for notifications so that you can be informed whenever we post a new video. So let's begin. We're doing Frank Herbert's Dune, which was written in 1965 and has inspired many other scientific stories and science fiction works. So in particular, some people have said that Star Wars was influenced by Dune. You may notice that in the first movie, Princess Leia's ship was going to get spice, and also the desert planet Tatooine was very similar to the desert planet Dune. Certainly there could be an argument that Dune did inspire or influence Star Wars. It has obviously influenced many people. It's a great book, so why wouldn't it? And yeah, I think it's up to you whether you want to believe that or not. Certainly there's an argument for it. In 1985 there was a film by David Lynch, and that has had mixed reviews. It did change some of the story. David Lynch wanted to put his own stamp on it and change things, such as when it rains at the end of the movie, and other little things about the weapons that they were using. But, you know, I think for the time it was still a good movie. It did change the books a little bit, but enjoyable. And then, of course, that led on to the 2000-2003 miniseries, which was very successful, but very hard to watch, to get these days, you know. And then we're waiting for the 2021 film. So there should be a lot of YouTube content about Dune these days because of the film coming out. I don't want to add to a lot of that commentary. This is not going to be about the films. This is going to be about the books. But also, I'm not going to talk about the plot or the characters that much. I'm going to leave that for you to enjoy when you go and read the books yourself. I'm going to talk a little bit about the books, but it's more about my general feelings and the things that I enjoyed, rather than discussing the nitty-gritty of the books, because I want to leave that to you. I will give you a little bit of a spoiler alert, and that is that watching the David Lynch film is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I've watched it a couple of times. I've read the books twice, and you know, probably will give them another read after the movie. They are quite deep, so they are books that you can read a couple of times and get more out of and enjoy deeper layers of them. It's very there's a lot of political intrigue, and sort of a lot of there's a lot of stuff there to dig into that you know, they do reward more than one reading. For me, the Dune series feels like a piece of Sufi mysticism. Saying that, I know nothing about Sufi mysticism, so I don't want to offend anybody by saying that, or you know, talk too much about that as a spiritual path, but it just had a lot of the words and the feeling in the desert and the way that they go about things feels like that. It does use Islamic, Arabic, and Persian cultural symbology, which is interesting, and considering the political environment of today's world, it would be doubtful that such a book could be written these days. I'm not saying it wouldn't be, but it's certainly that using those cultures as well as others. There's lots. It is a mix of religions and cultures. There's all sorts of stuff in there. There's a lot of influence from Zen Buddhism, but of there's there is this strong flavour of that in there, and that's part of what makes it unique and interesting, I think. There's a lot of political intrigue and assassinations and plots against each other and traps and tricks and all this sort of thing, and internal fighting and spies and stuff like this, and psychological control. It's very interesting in those parts, but also it's philosophical as well. Over the whole series, it changes. So the first couple of books are more political in tone, whereas the middle books get more philosophical. Towards the end, it becomes more interesting in that the power structures. Sex is used as a weapon. It's not a romantic sex. It's used as a form of control, almost semi-magical control of programming people, which is an interesting idea. It's a bit strange, but to get your head around, but it's interesting, and it's definitely different, and but it's not a book for the kids. And I'd say, whereas Star Wars is a book that children can enjoy, Dune is too much for them, and definitely there's a lot of adult. It's science fiction for adults, because there's so much politics and so many themes like genetic engineering and that sort of stuff, that it's quite deep. So we've got this desert planet Arrakis, and Paul, who's the main character, he is belongs to this noble family, and in that way it's a little bit like Game of Thrones with these competing families, but the interesting thing about it is that it's not all just noble families. There's other factions involved. I won't go into, because I'll let you discover them for yourself reading the books, but there's this sort of like toing and froing and working together, but not really working together, as they try to manipulate each other and position themselves into power. It's quite interesting. And of course it all revolves around the spice Melange, which is this sort of unique substance which extends life and enhances consciousness, but it's also central to space travel. So it is rare and the source of power in the universe. So everybody wants to control it, and being able to control it is part of the political competition that's in these books. For me, some of the interesting things are the powerful female characters. I think although the world itself is quite patriarchal, within that there are some very strong female characters and some very powerful female groups that work on have their own agendas and seek their own power and basically are quite a force to be reckoned with. I also like this idea of genetic memory. So this whole idea that you can access the memories that your genes have experienced through their multiple lives. So it's not like reincarnation or that kind of thing. It's genetic memory going through the DNA. And yeah, that was quite interesting part of it. I haven't seen that in many other places before. I thought the overthrowing of machines was good too, the way that humans had sort of filled these niches, the political intrigue that I've mentioned before, and this sort of unique water poor culture, you know, where this world, it's a desert world, water is so scarce, and how a culture would grow and adapt around that is quite interesting, especially as an Australian. I find that interesting. I think Australia has a lot in common with Dune sometimes, but maybe that's just my opinion. So Frank Herbert was certainly a very intelligent man and had a lot of interesting ideas. He believed that feudalism was a condition that humans often fell into, and that they would often give up the responsibilities of making decisions and let other people lead for them. So that was part of one of the themes of these books, and that's why we have these noble houses that are competing with each other. He deliberately suppressed technology so that there were no thinking machines, so that he could focus on the human side of things. And there was this mix of hard and soft science. So there is a little bit of sort of magic pseudoscience, but there is also a lot of hard, you know, environmental science and other stuff in there. So it's a good mix of those two things. Then there's this whole thing of the hero myth and the hero's journey, and I think that Frank Herbert was really trying to pick that to bits and show us the dangers of it. So he, you know, wanted us to be careful of that and be careful of the way that we participate in that, and to give us the advice that we were better off to rely on our own judgment and make our own mistakes rather than giving away our ability to make decisions. Saying that, they did follow a lot of the hero's journey, you know, the special birth and the trials and tribulations sort of journey to the underworld and then coming back to power. He also, you know, drew upon the science fiction motif of the hero gaining godlike powers using science and technology. So there's a lot in the books. There's environmentalism that's particularly relevant today. There's all this altered states of consciousness and the power of the mind, very influenced by Zen Buddhism. There's this idea of cultural seeding, so people going into cultures, you know, generations before and laying down stories that would later become myths so that their cultures could be controlled. This whole water shortage was a metaphor for oil as well. This genetic engineering of humans was also very interesting. This struggle against imperialism and control, and the powerful female characters that were in the books were all very interesting, and I believe that this is the Lord of the Rings of science fiction, and I think you will enjoy that as part of that. In the meantime, I'm waiting for these movies to come out. I'm really looking forward to them. You know, there should be a couple. I'm looking forward to seeing this first one. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. Bye.